Am I an idiot for telling my fiancé his best friend cannot be his best man? I know how it sounds. My fiancé, male 29, is an amazing guy, sweet, funny, attractive, and hardworking. I, female 29, was impressed with him from the moment I met him, and we've been together 6 years. We are devoted to each other and working toward building our shared life. We each put a percentage of our earnings into 2 funds, one for our wedding, which is a year away, and another for a down payment on a home. We each pay the same percentage, but I pay a much larger amount because I went into a higher income field. We've budgeted it out pretty well. At this rate, we'll have enough to buy a home around the same time as our wedding, as planned. As to the wedding, we both wanted a small one, and my fiancé and I decided to have a destination wedding. We are paying for the entire wedding ourselves. My family's pretty poor, so I've also been saving a portion of my remaining paycheck to be able to pay for all of them to come to the wedding for free. I'm also paying for one of my bridesmaids who went into teaching and doesn't make much. My fiancé wouldn't really have the disposable cash to do that, but his family can afford to pay, somewhat wealthy, and is happy for the vacation. The problem arose last week. My fiancé's best friend Tom, male 30, who he asked to be his best man, got in an accident. It was likely entirely his fault as he was riding his motorcycle drunk. He suffered significant injuries, is going to have some major medical bills, and admitted to my fiancé he doesn't think he can afford to come. My fiancé wants to pay for him several $1,000s and lend him money to help cover his medical bills. But, especially with everything going on, my fiancé does not have and is unlikely to be able to get the money to do either. I could afford to do both, but I don't want to. Truthfully, I can't stand this friend. He often rides or drives drunk, does not have a job, makes snarky comments about my fiancé that he insists are just jokes, but that I know actually affect my fiancé, and lives in his parents' basement while ignoring their well-being. I was willing to have him up there as best man because my fiancé considers him a brother and it's his choice. I wasn't happy about it, but I wasn't about to throw a tantrum about it. But with everything going on, my fiancé has suggested taking a huge chunk of our savings for a house to help, and I said no. We got in a huge fight and he called me selfish and cruel, at which point I lost it. Told him his loser friend did this to himself, and that there was no way in hell I'd pay anything for his sorry ass. I ended by saying, if he can't afford to come, he can't be your best man. He hasn't spoken to me since last night and slept on the couch. While I still think I'm on solid footing, I wonder if I went too far. Am I an idiot? Edit. Thank you to everyone that's responded. I will try to work through all of those this evening. I just wanted to make an edit based on a question issue a lot of people have brought up, our finances. To clarify, we have talked about everything, especially financial expectations, to make sure we're on the same page. My fiancé's dad is a family law attorney, and as soon as it became clear we were in it for the long term, he sat us down, discussed with us the common pitfalls he saw that ended relationships, and gave us his advice to avoid them. His advice revolves largely around open communication and setting expectations and boundaries early, especially around money. So when we each graduated, we talked about the career paths we wanted. My fiancé decided he'd rather take a lower paying job, with normal hours, less stress, and more time outside of work. He wasn't worried about helping his parents out later in life, because they are very well set up. He also wasn't worried that much about developing a big retirement account, because he's very likely to inherit enough to survive on comfortably. I, on the other hand, likely will not have any inheritance and will want to provide for my parents' medical expenses and retirement as they get older. I also have a good amount of student loan debt. He doesn't because his parents could afford to pay for it, and while we both really enjoy traveling, he'd be willing to cut back on it significantly to have an easier job year-round. I wouldn't want to burden him with those costs, the ones that I brought into the relationship, as I feel that would naturally cause resentment, especially if it meant he had to work a job he enjoyed less to help share the costs with me. So I took a high-stress job that I don't enjoy and that requires me to work longer hours, but that pays significantly more. We agreed we each should be able to make that choice and decided a fair way to handle finances would be to 1. Create a joint account for common expenses, rent, bills, food, entertainment, work clothes. At his father's suggestion, we put in writing specifically what the fund could be used for, agreed that anything outside that list would need to be approved by both of us, and that if the account is dissolved, we each get back what we put in and we split any interest evenly. We each pay in 35% of our incomes. Because of the difference in our incomes, about 80% of the fund ultimately comes from my income, which I think is reasonable because we're a team, we're building a life together, and the difficulties of my job invariably affect him too. 2. We create other joint savings accounts as needed for new projects, each the same way, with a written agreement as to what they can be used for. We have one for the house, each pays 20% of our incomes, and one for the wedding, each pays 10%. 3. We each get to keep the remaining 35% for our personal spending. My fiancé does not have that much left over. He has taken out pre-taxes for a 401k and he uses the rest for his car and a few hobbies. Right now he voluntarily went part-time because his workplace was going to need to fire people if they didn't get volunteers due to the current situation, and we're in a good position otherwise, so he has pretty much no disposable income. I have a ton, but it goes mostly toward yearly vacations for us, my student loans, I'm paying twice what is owed each month to pay them down, my retirement account, an account set up for my parents' future expenses, and my car payments. Right now it is also going toward helping with his car payments and hobbies. So yes, I could cut back on certain things and be able to pay for his friend, but it would affect those other things that I've worked hard for. I realize this system would not work for everyone, but it works for us, and I am definitely not financially abusing my fiancé. Update. It's been a little over 2 months since my original post and a lot has happened. In the days after that argument, my fiancé and I had a number of heart-to-hearts. We each apologized for how we behaved. He admitted that his friend had done some terrible things and, after some soul-searching, that he and his friend do not have a healthy relationship. He loves the guy, as his friend had been there for him through some tough times, but knows Tom needs to change. I thought hard about several of the comments made on the original post, and made a tough choice. I told him that I hated the idea of bailing Tom out, and would never agree to help with his medical bills, but provided Tom made some effort to change, I would pay for him to come to the wedding with my own separate funds. I love my fiancé more than anything, and I don't want anything to mar our wedding or the start of our marriage. Long story short, we sat down with Tom's parents, who were also fed up with him and had previously refused to help with any bills, to discuss the best way to help him. We all ultimately agreed that we would cover some of his costs, us the wedding and his parents the medical bills, but only if he accepted responsibility for what he's done and hit some concrete milestones toward changing, including successfully completing a program at an inpatient treatment facility for his addictions. All four of us sat down with him to make this offer. I won't go into details, but it didn't go well. My fiancé finally lost it and told Tom that he'd stuck by him through years of shitty choices, and that if Tom wouldn't get help, he didn't even want him as a friend, much less a best man. Tom told us all to frick off. We hadn't seen or heard from him since, and it has been incredibly hard on my fiancé. Then, this past weekend, my fiancé received a text from Tom. It wasn't long, but thanks for everything he had done for Tom, apologized for everything, and let him know that he was on his way to a treatment facility. He hoped he could stand at my fiancé's side at our wedding, like my fiancé had always stood at his. My fiancé is trying to be cautious, but it clearly meant so much to him, and I know he believes against all odds that his friend will become a better man. I have my doubts, but you know what? I hope he does too. No idiots here. I'm glad he has the support of friends and family. It's literally the difference between night and day. They always say that when you go to court with family, as opposed to without, you have a much better chance of mercy, because when the judge can see you have a support system, your chances of recovery increase tenfold. What would you have done differently? Let me know in the comments. Now, you won't want to miss this next story. Am I an idiot for telling my wife her parents are not allowed to watch our son ever again? My wife and I have a 2-year-old son and have been married for 4 years. Our anniversary was a month ago and we found a nice, secluded cabin on Airbnb and rented it out for a long weekend getaway. My wife asked her parents if they would be willing to watch our son and they agreed as long as we dropped him off at their house. That worked for us since it was on our way anyway. I was raised Lutheran and my wife was raised Catholic, but neither of us currently go to church and have not had our son baptized. My mother-in-law knows this and hates it. She thinks our son needs to be baptized or he will burn in hell. She's that kind of Catholic. So we go on our trip, and when we pick up our son and ask how the weekend went, mother-in-law says everything went fine and that she has saved my son's soul from the devil. I ask her what she meant and she says she had our son baptized that morning at her church. I tried my best to keep my cool so I didn't scream at my mother-in-law in front of my son, but I pretty much grabbed my son and left. On the car ride home I was fuming and told my wife as calmly as I could that this would be the last time her parents had our son unsupervised. She tried to downplay what her mom had done, but I told her we need to wait until we get home to talk about it because I'm not fighting in front of my kid. When we got home and had a chance to talk about it, things got heated. I told my wife I no longer trust her parents with our son and that if they did something like this behind our backs I can't trust them to respect our wishes as parents in the future. I said this was a huge breach of trust and I will forever look at her mom differently. She continued to try to defend her mom, saying that she was only doing what she thought was best for her grandson. She even downplayed it by saying that it's just a little water and a few words and we don't go to church anyway, so what does it matter? I told her that under no circumstances will I allow her parents to watch our son by themselves again. I said that we can still let them see their grandson, but only if we are present. I also said that if she doesn't see what the big deal is with this situation, that maybe we aren't on the same page as parents and maybe we need to see a counselor. She started crying and said that this isn't the kind of decision I get to make on my own and I'm an idiot for trying to tell her what kind of relationship her parents can have with our son. I told her that I no longer have any trust or respect for her parents and that I don't know if there's anything they can do to repair that. I told her I don't care if that makes me an idiot, but what her parents did was unforgivable in my eyes and they put themselves in this position to lose privileges with our son. She's been trying to convince me to change my mind for the last month, but I'm not budging. To me, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. Update. First off, I want to thank everyone who sent me supportive messages and advice. I never expected my post to get so much attention. Since many of you requested an update, here we go. Turns out some of you were right. My wife was in on it. I confronted her a couple days after I posted and directly asked her if she knew that her parents planned this. She broke down and confessed everything to me. Mother-in-law had been pestering her about baptizing our son nonstop and my wife finally caved. My wife has been working from home during COVID while my job requires me to go into the office. My wife and mother-in-law started doing Zoom meetings with my mother-in-law's priest to start the baptism process. They lied to the priest and told him that I was okay with baptizing our son but didn't want to be involved. The priest allowed it and they started doing online baptism classes while I was at work. My wife admitted that she planned it around our anniversary getaway and that mother-in-law had somehow convinced the priest that her and father-in-law would be the only ones in attendance. My wife told me that I wasn't supposed to find out, but my mother-in-law couldn't keep her mouth shut for even one day about it. Their intention was to keep this from me permanently. I did contact the church to let them know the truth. I talked with the priest and he was surprisingly helpful. He said he would take the proper steps to make sure mother-in-law is no longer welcome in their church and to reach out to the local parish to see what further steps need to be taken. I have yet to hear back from them on that. My wife and mother-in-law are mad that I got her kicked out of her church. But I don't care what they think or feel anymore. These people who I love and trusted betrayed me and I felt a range of emotions I didn't know existed. My wife begged for forgiveness, but the fact that she didn't come clean on her own makes me feel she would have kept this from me unless I confronted her. She's willing to do therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I don't know if I want to put in that work. I feel like there's no coming back from this. I contacted a divorce lawyer and started discussing what a divorce would look like and if there is any way I can add provisions to a divorce agreement that would keep my in-laws from seeing my son unsupervised. He's been very helpful, but I have not given him the go-ahead to actually file for divorce yet. I feel I am still too angry about the entire thing to think rationally and want to give myself time to fully grasp what a divorce will mean for me and my family. My wife and I aren't talking much. I pretty much go to work, come home to play with my son, go to bed, and repeat. I don't know what the future is going to bring, but I do know that without the support and help from people here, I don't think I would have the clarity I do now. Not an idiot. As someone who went through a divorce, I can confidently say to not make any decisions while angry. Give yourself as much time as needed to process and only make decisions then. Personally, cutting mother-in-law out of your lives would be number one of my list is forgiveness, and it's almost a certain guarantee that your wife only did it to appease dearest mother. That doesn't take away her fault in this, but there was external pressure. Not an idiot. Look, you need to accept that if you do divorce, it is very unlikely a judge will allow your provision regarding unsupervised visits for grandparents to be allowed. They have not harmed your child. They have simply had a priest pour water on him and say words. That is not enough to disallow them access by a court. Your feelings are valid and whatever you choose is your choice. But you need to be aware that the chances of that provision are highly, highly unlikely.